In this video, I will show you how to sketch an angle in radians and degrees. I will show you how to find the positive and negative coterminal angles, and I will show you how to find the reference angles. In addition, I will show you how to convert from radians to degrees and from degrees to radians. Alright, for this problem, let's sketch the angle 13 pi over 6. I find it helpful to take the 13 over 6 part and figure out what that is as a decimal. So 13 divided by 6 is about 2.2. So that makes this approximately 2.2 pi. So in standard position, the angle always starts at the positive x-axis. Now I'm going to show the path of the rotation with this green spiral that I'm about to draw. If I went all the way around and back to where I started from, that would be 2 pi radians. But this is 2.2 pi, so I need to go a little bit past that. Alright, so that tells me that the terminal side of this angle is going to wind up a little bit past and into the first quadrant. Okay, so there's my sketch. Okay, now let's talk about positive and negative coterminal angles in radians. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, if I go all the way around and back to where I started from, that is 2 pi radians. So every time I add or subtract 2 pi radians, I'm really going back to where I started from. But in this case, I'm dealing with a denominator of 6. So I want to add and subtract 2 pi, but I really need to have a denominator of 6. So I'm going to multiply by 6. And so 2 pi is the same thing as 12 pi over 6. So the original angle is 13 pi over 6. So if I take that original angle of 13 pi over 6, if I subtract 2 pi by subtracting 12 pi over 6, that's going to give me a coterminal angle. It's going to bring me back to where I started from. 13 pi over 6 minus 12 pi over 6 is just pi over 6. So that is a positive coterminal angle. Okay, pi over 6. Now I also need a negative coterminal angle, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to subtract again. So if I take the pi over 6 that I have now and subtract another 12 pi over 6, that's going to give me negative 11 pi over 6, because this is like 1 minus 12 is negative 11. So that is a negative coterminal angle, negative 11 pi over 6. Now, the reference angle is going to be this pi over 6. The reference angle is always the angle, the angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. The reference angle is always positive. So when I found that positive coterminal angle of pi over 6, this was the coterminal angle. Alright, that just goes directly from 0 to pi over 6. That's coterminal. That means this must have a size of pi over 6 radians. Okay, so that is going to be my reference angle. It's going to simply be pi over 6. Now, sometimes it's more complicated than that, but this time we got off easy. Now, we need to convert theta to degrees. And again, theta is this original angle, 13 pi over 6. So I need to take my 13 pi over 6 and convert to degrees. Now, if you want to convert to degrees, you need to multiply by 180 degrees over pi. 180 degrees and pi are the same thing. So we are really multiplying by 1. But in this form, the pi's will cancel each other out. Alright, so now I have 13 times 180 over 6. So this is now degrees, because I canceled out the pi. I've got degrees. So I just need to simplify this down. Okay, so I could do fraction mode on my TI-84 Plus. If I go alpha y equals and just hit enter, because there's my fraction right there, that puts the calculator into fraction mode. So what was I trying to do? 13 times 180 over 6. So I can do 13 times 180 over 6. Alright, so that is 390. Okay, so that means this is going to be 390 degrees. Alright, let's do that all over again, but this time we're going to start with degrees. Alright, we're supposed to sketch the angle, so we're going to start off in standard position. That always starts with the positive x-axis. Now, notice that this time, this is a negative angle. So instead of going counterclockwise, the negative direction is clockwise. So if I started from here, if I went to here, that's negative 90 degrees so far. Now if I went to here, that would be negative 180 degrees. Well, this is only negative 160, so this would be too far. So that tells me that I need to stop somewhere here in the third quadrant. Alright, so I'm going to stop somewhere in the third quadrant. Alright, so there's my sketch right there. So now let's talk about one positive and one negative coterminal angle in degrees. So as far as coterminal angles, let's see, I have negative 160. Okay, so if I start with negative 160, whoops, I put 180 by mistake. If I start with negative 160, I can get a positive coterminal angle by adding 360. Alright, that's going to put me back to where I started from. Alright, so that is positive 200 degrees. Okay, on the other hand, if I do negative 160 minus 360, that'll give me a negative coterminal angle. So that is negative 520. So that is my negative coterminal angle, negative 520 degrees. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Now the reference angle in degrees. So remember, the reference angle is the angle between the terminal side here and the x-axis. So this is the reference angle that we're looking for. It's got to always be positive, so be careful of that. So look, if I had kept going, I would have gotten to negative 180 degrees. But instead, I had to stop at negative 160 degrees, because that's where this angle is. So the question is, how far apart are these angles? Negative 160, negative 180. Hopefully you can see that they are 20 degrees apart. So that is the reference angle. It doesn't matter that this is below the x-axis or anything like that. It's only the distance between them. So negative 180, that's 20 degrees further than negative 160. So this is a size, a positive size of 20 degrees. So that is the reference angle. Okay, now we need to convert the angle to radians. So the original angle is negative 160 degrees. And so we have to decide, are we going to multiply by pi over 180, or will we multiply by 180 over pi? Well, it's all a matter of canceling out the correct thing. So instead of putting out the degree symbol like I had a moment ago, I'm going to write out the word degrees to make it really obvious. Okay, so I need degrees to cancel out. So I need to multiply by the version of this that has degrees in the bottom. So if I use this first version, pi over 180, this is pi over 180 degrees. Alright, this way degrees cancels out. So I'm left with radians. So now it's just a matter of simplifying this. So I have negative 100, why do I keep doing that? I have negative 160 in the numerator, because this is like over 1. And then I have pi, and this is all over 180. So it's really just a matter of reducing this as far as I can. Now, if I divide both of these by 10, the zeros will go away. So that gives me negative 16 pi over 18. I'm noticing that both of these are divisible by 2. So if I do that, that's going to give me negative 8 pi over 9. And that's as far as we can go. So in radians, I have negative 8 pi over 9. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. I hope it was helpful. I will see you on the next video.